Welcome to You're Doing It Wrong with Coach PJ. Today we're going to go through the barbell hip thrust. This is a great exercise for really targeting the glutes, and you can overload this exercise. I use it a lot with my athletes. It's got a lot of benefits, but it can be really damaging to your spine if you're doing it incorrectly. So I'll show you how I see a lot of people perform this exercise. So Christina has the bar set up right here on her hips. She's going to go ahead and she's going to lower her hips towards the ground, and then she'll drive her hips up. So this looks how most people perform this exercise at the gym. They overload the weight and they think, lower their hips, drive their hips up. But she's putting herself in a really unsafe position here and losing some of the effectiveness of this exercise. So the major thing that she's doing, if you watch as she goes down, see her rib cage sticking out here and her hips are dropping forward. So she's extending her rib cage out, she's putting her spine into a really bad position, and she's dumping her hips into this anterior tilted position that if you've heard any of my videos, you've heard me talk about how bad that position can be for your low back. So she's putting herself in a really unsafe position, and a few simple correctives can put her in a much safer position and make this a more effective exercise for training her glutes and strengthening the posterior side of her body. So instead of going into that position, what I'm going to have Christina do is I'm going to have her take a deep breath out and make sure she keeps her rib cage down. I'm going to have her follow the movement with her head. So as she goes and lowers her hips, her head and her torso are going to come down and stay in this nice straight line. So notice her rib cage is not extended out here. As she comes up, when she gets to the top, she's just going to think about squeezing $1 between her glutes. So she's squeezing her butt cheeks together, pinching $1. She's not focused on extending her hips. Show extending your hips all the way up. So right here, where she tries to extend her hips to the ceiling, she ends up arching her back and using a lot of her low back to try to get into this excessive extended position. And that's not what I want. I want to take all that pressure off her low back. So she's going to keep her tailbone tucked underneath her. She's going to keep her rib cage down, and then go ahead and show a few reps. Now she's keeping a nice neutral pelvis position. She's keeping a nice neutral spine position. And she's training her hips through extension. So she's going into flexion, extension at the hip. Great training exercise. She's putting a ton of stress onto her glutes and her hamstrings, and she's getting a ton of work out of this while keeping her pelvis and her spine in a nice neutral position. So we want to make sure we pay attention to that rib cage position and pelvis position when we're performing this barbell hip thrust so we get the most training effect out of it and we keep the spine and the hips safe.